Hi, I'm Katie, and this is the Free Art and Design School podcast, web series, whatever. And I have Whitney here today if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Whitney.
Um, what do you do, Whitney? What are you currently up to?
What do I do in general? Lots of things. But currently, physically, right now, I'm in my studio because I'm an artist and I make mixed media art. So I've got lots of different media in here. I'm also a teacher. I am currently about to teach for the second quarter uh, at UC Santa Cruz.
Oh, nice.
I've been teaching printmaking there, and I'm obsessed. It's my alma mater, so it's great to be back. I've also taught design classes and art history classes at some Bay Area community colleges. And I'm a part of a few different printmaking institutions in the Bay Area.
So you're the first person we've had on, other than James, who's both, well, you're the only one who's an active educator currently, and a working artist. I was very curious how you got into printmaking because it's such a niche field. And it's super exciting that you get to work at your alma mater. Has that been super awesome?
Yeah, it's been a dream, honestly. It's like a dream job. Magical. Because I know the space so well, and because it's a really I'm really lucky because the printmaking studio at UCSC is like kind of legendary. It's one of the best in the area. How did I get into print? I've been printmaking for a long time. Um, I was lucky enough to go to an arts-focused high school. So it was like a performing and visual arts high school in Orange County. And so I was studying different foundational art mediums since it's high school and middle school. So since I was like in seventh grade. Um, and at the end of high school, there was a printmaking class. And you're saying it's niche, like it was really special that we had that. Like it's not super common. But we had amazing teachers that offered it, and I just like fell in love. I was like 16 or 17.
Wow.
And I knew right away, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what's up. And so when I was looking for colleges, um, for some reason I didn't want to go to art school. I
Yeah.
wanted to have like a real well-rounded liberal arts education, I guess. But it was really important to me that there was a printmaking program. And UC Santa Cruz had this just breathtaking space that like no other university like it has. Like, not to talk shit, but like Berkeley doesn't have that. Like UCLA does not have that. Like there are other good print studios in other schools, but it's really special.
Thing.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon. Like now that I'm a teacher in printmaking and have been like mentoring people in printmaking, and like the amount of classes and workshops that I've taught involving like introducing people to one of the like a block printing process. It's like an addiction and like a infectious disease. It sounds like aggressive, but you know what I mean. It's just it it gets you immediately. It gets everybody because it's the best. I could go on and on about why.
Yeah, I would love you to do that. And I think you're sort of exactly the kind of person I want on this podcast because the main theme of the Free Art and Design School is that art school is extremely expensive. College in general is extremely expensive. And it makes no sense to me why something that will not make you a ton of money in life, like generally, is so gate kept. Why, I mean, we're lucky enough to work at Max's studio, which has like great rates, like very amazing community. But my sort of goal was to bring that kind of education into the public so that anyone can access it. So I specifically wanted to ask you questions now that you've been through sort of like every layer of arts education, and now we're on the other side as an educator, like what you sort of think of, or like what's your pedagogy when it comes to teaching young artists, because art is also scary to learn. It is daunting.
Wow. Okay. Where to start? I have so much to say. Yeah, as you said, yeah, that's a good way to summarize it. I've been through like every layer of it. Like as a student, like I've been an art student since I could like crawl, and like like before I went to that school, I went there because I was already making art, and I've taught like every age, um, and was even like a full-time high school art teacher, um, and then college level and so on. Like those experiences have taught me so much about the learning process and effective teaching processes. And at the core of everything that I do is making it feel possible. Because what you just said is really true, that like studying art, being an art student can be really scary. And it has to do with those like weird hierarchies that exist and barriers around it, like schools really insanely expensive and the materials are expensive, and like there's these bizarre like cultural perceptions of what an artist means, and then people have them at different levels in their life, and they're like associated with other structures like capitalism that like disrupt or like influence how artists see themselves and artists see their work, and how people who are not artists and not a part of art making like see art, and how like the two have to interfere. So there's like all of these like perceptions to navigate. And for like a concrete example, high school students especially are a good like case study, I found, for how people feel about learning art and like the different types of approaches there tend to be and what goes into that. Like I taught an intro to art high school class. It was like your baseline. You had to take an art class to graduate. And so like a percentage of the students were there because they wanted to be. They wanted to learn. They're creative. They either identify as an artist or they just are creative. But there was also like plenty of students there who had no interest.
Yeah.
Like, they did not want to be present. They felt like they were stuck there, forced into it. And it was my job to navigate that. I would say that like a good summary of my teaching philosophy about art is it's my job as a teacher, it's my responsibility to make it possible for everybody to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the student's responsibility to like take that opportunity and then ensure their own success. But making it possible is like can be a challenge because there's so many students, so many people that come into it thinking, having this like mental block that like I'm not an artist.
Yeah.
And that you either are or you aren't. And I'm not one, and I can't become one. It's not a possibility for me. And like and I would have to like try different things of being like, well, did you come out of the womb being able to throw a perfect spiral? And they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, so what did you have to do to get there?
Yeah, I
And
hadn't even thought about like the difference between teaching like someone who wants to learn art versus teaching someone who's reluctant to learn art, but you have to be in the same classroom at the same time teaching all of those people.
yeah, and it's crazy. Like I, it's a weird thing, but I do think it's like critical that art is a requirement for
Yeah.
you in your like well-rounded education. Like that type of education funding is shrinking, and like there's a lot of districts in the country that just stopped requiring it and therefore like just cut it out entirely. But it's like a really critical part of your upbringing to have a space to be creative, especially if you're like an adolescent person and you need an outlet. And another thing that was really, really important for me in that experience was that like before teaching high school, I had a lot of experience teaching like old ladies, like teaching workshops for like retired people and like older people or like or even peers. But there's a pattern that's just like really, really, really common of people coming back to
Yeah.
art
Yeah.
later in their life and saying the same fucking thing every time. Same thing. They say, wow, this is so great. I love this. I used to love making art. It used to be so important to me to be creative. But when I was in high school or middle school, I had like a really mean teacher,
Yeah.
or like I had a teacher tell me I wasn't good enough, or my peers told me that, or like someone told me you can't make money off it, so it's not worth your time. Like something discouraged me along the way and convinced me that it was there's no value, no inherent value to just being a creative person.
Yeah.
And so now I'm rediscovering my relationship and saying, hey, actually, I think I like need this to survive. Like that was so common that it
Yeah.
was like really, 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 really important to me. My brother is also a high school art teacher.
Oh my God.
It's like our main thing is like, and because this happened to like our mom, this happened like these are common things we hear. And like the two of us were lucky to be really encouraged. And we like recognized how much that encouragement affected our life to become like continue being artists. So it was like critical for us to be like fostering an environment where everybody feels capable and welcome. And because if you don't have that, you can't make anything.
Right. Yeah. I got really lucky. My mom, when I was applying to art schools during the pandemic, was like, you should go to CalArts because that was my dream school and I didn't get to go there. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And that's not why I chose to go to CalArts. It's one of many reasons.
Yeah.
But I thought, and my mom is like an amazing, successful lawyer. It's just like her parents were like, you should be a lawyer, right? Like, but she's an incredible artist.
But my mother I have the same description. She's
Wow.
also a lawyer who is an amazing artist.
Super freaky. Okay. So what you're talking about is a literal universal experience. um, I wanted to ask you because our background is I met you when I was working at the Aesthetic Union. You helped me there and at Max's to learn a lot about printing and the history of printing. And you are an amazing mentor, and I've always looked up to you in the short time that I've gotten to know you. And I was wondering how you were saying that you really care about like making people feel welcome, and like it is amazing how not stupid I feel when you are helping me with something. Like it is so easy to feel really stupid when you're doing something for the first time. And I'm wondering how that comes naturally to you or whether it doesn't, like how you sort of developed your teaching style based on your philosophy.
That's a great question. I'm really glad to hear that you feel that way. Because that's like probably the core, like it's a really main thing to me. Those two questions. I'll answer the first part. I have lots of teacher friends, which I love. Love hanging out with my fellow art teachers and history teachers. And one of them, who's an unbelievable teacher, and I've learned so much from her. Becca Sexton. She says this thing once when we were both tutors. We were like in working as tutors and when we were in our graduate program. And she said this thing that I turned it into a zine. Like I was obsessed with, and she said it like offhand. It was something like learning, the process of learning itself is incredibly emotional at its core. And like that aspect of it gets overlooked or like treated like it's not something to pay attention to. It's incredibly emotional because you're forced to reckon with the fact that you did think something about the world and you were wrong, or like you didn't know, and you have to like break that down and be comfortable admitting that vulnerability and then building something else from it. And it's also often very public, the process of learning. And those are like things I try to just always remember. And it wasn't always, like, second part of the question, it was not always easy for me to make sure people don't feel stupid when I teach them. Like I think like a lot of times I can be very bossy, and I know that has like loaded and like gendered, but like I historically have not always been able to make sure people don't feel dumb. And I've just like over time found like ways of communicating, methods of introducing information, and like that have like made people feel welcome to be vulnerable in that way, because at the heart, like aligned with everything I said, like another tenet of my practice or like my teaching philosophy is like the art classroom in particular. It's true many classrooms, but in a special way, the art classroom, because it's tied to students learning how to express their identity, express their like inner things that are very like personal, very close, like it's tied to your whole self, like what you do in the art classroom. It has potential for being like really transformative for you, and like really, really, as you know why art is important, but like the way that can be like made impossible, like ways that can people can be blocked from experiencing that in the art classroom, is when it doesn't feel like a safe space to fail. Like that's the like I would like paint that on the wall if I could. I thought about it in that high school classes, like this is a safe space to fail, like like breaking down your relationship to what like failure means, and breaking down expectations of like either you're good at something or you're not, and allowing for the space to like try with no a correct expectation for how it's supposed to turn out. And like that sounds a little bit like soft parenting vibes, which I mean it kind of is, but it's not. Like because of that, like it's not an old school art, like art pedagogy. Old school art pedagogy is like tough love or whatever. And there's like space for that, but like it doesn't have to be like that. And it like should not be like that for people who are like starting their relationship to making things,
Yeah, I think what you said
especially.
about learning being an not educational, learning being an emotional process, like a lot of older generations didn't have sort of access to that kind of language. And I was interviewing one of my other friends who's a Spanish teacher for the podcast, and he was saying that our generation and like the generation of students that we're teaching is so radically different and has like such a different way about thinking about not only education for the world, that like even if older generations would criticize some of the language you're using as like soft parenting or whatever, it's like, well, maybe we try that. Like we tried the hard ass way. Why don't we, maybe bad things will happen if we're too soft on people, but I don't see that being a problem in something like art, which is like purely expressive. Um, your experimenting comment on that orange poster, one of the things that I typed up last year was experimenting implies failure. Never stop trying new things. And that was like 100% something that printmaking taught me, because you fail.
Yes.
Hey, printmaking is not nice to people who don't like failing. It is constant. But that's how you
I
learn.
had the same relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I no print comes out well on the first try. And if it does, that's the only one that's going to turn out well. Like those machines, or even using your hands, like, printing is supposed to reproduce everything perfectly, but that's just not how it works. And there's a beauty in that.
I totally agree. You're naming more of my philosophies.
One of the reasons I wanted to interview you. I'm very curious, like you yourself are an artist, you're a practicing artist, your work is gorgeous. And I was wondering if you could talk about how your personal work influences you as a teacher, or whether you have to like create a barrier, because I know like you and I both are interested in like the female form and nudes and stuff like that, and I always am like, like is that like a dangerous and fraught thing to like talk about in the classroom, or
Ooh,
are you just like fuck it, like it's college?
it's a good question. Yeah, it's definitely context based. Like, I was teaching at a public high school. There are like barriers
Yeah.
to the some of the content that's going to be like accepted, or like just things to be cautious of. But it was like a San Francisco public high school. It would have been fine probably. I have like nude tattoos. um,
Same.
so I don't know. It was I kind of um I kind of asked myself like, what would serve the student experience, and in that context, like sharing some of my work that like might have been like distracted, but not exactly like you should. That's for me at least. Like the nude figures that are in my work are art historical images.
Yes.
So it would have been a place to like have conversations about art history. But in college now, I don't. It's there's those barriers don't exist.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that's what the beauty of teaching at the college level. Well, there's a lot of beauties to it. It really is a luxury. it's an absolute luxury to teach an art class that people want to be in, and they've like declared an art major at the college level. Like they've already made such a commitment to being present and learning and huge sacrifice for their life to be there. Like it's such a luxury to be in a place where I get to like guide students like that. And that was my goal like this whole time, like since I graduated undergrad, that this is like what I've been working towards. And it's like partially because of what you're able to do, like partially because like since so many of the other barriers that get in the way of the teaching process are just like gone. like they wiped away like so many of the barriers because of, as I said, like we all are there to be present and learn. Like that's the context. You can really, there's so much freedom there for the students to express themselves and feel welcome to express themselves and encouraged. And so it, you know, there's no, the only barriers of like bringing my own work into that situation are like my own, like, I don't know, I kind of have a weird insecurity sometimes about or something. I don't know what it is. I try not, what it is that I try not to center myself.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon for practicing artists who are teachers to do that a little too much in the classroom. Like who like maybe teaching isn't their passion, they're just like part of their career or something. That's not uncommon. But I've had experiences, peers have had experiences of being like having a teacher like center what they're doing, center their own practice in the coursework, and like I have issues with that. I try to, leave myself out of it and just like provide like, hey, you know where to find me. If you want to look at my work, like here's where it is. Here's a glimpse. I always bring in physical examples of the projects we're doing, and a lot of them are mine.
Yeah.
It is important. I learned that, well, it's a balance. It's like a dance you have to play where like, I don't want to take up too much of the space with my own stuff. Also because it can be intimidating. Like it can step on that environment that I'm trying to build, where people are like, oh, I have to make it look like that. And I'm like, no. I'm like a professional artist. Like, you're a student. Like you don't have to make it look like that, but you'll get there. I was you, and you can be here. So like that dance is important. I forgot what else I was going to say.
No, it's good. I think,
but you have to tell them that you can do it. That was the other part. It's like I learned that one time in the high school class, especially when I was like struggling to even get people to want to be present or trust me, even like listen at all to anything I said ever, because they're like teenagers. Like once I showed them I could draw, they were like, oh shit.
She knows what she's talking about.
Maybe I could learn something. So.
Oh my God, now you made me forget what I was gonna say. So many, there's so many nuggets. I pull quotes from these conversations to put on the Instagram, and like you've said like 1,000 things that I just pick apart. I guess
you said a bunch that I was gonna say about printmaking.
Yeah, the suffering.
It's like so critical. Like I think that everything I've said so far about teaching is like, and my own art practice and just like my life in general, like the lessons that I live by are like owed entirely to my print practice.
Yeah.
Not like entirely, but like at its core, like I've written like essays about this. Like maybe I'll send you some rants.
Send me one.
But like printmaking is important for 1,000 reasons, and a big one is that you are so welcome. You learn how to fail. Like you learn how it can be okay. You learn how to treat a process with like openness because you're forced to. You've no other option. And at some point, when you embrace that, when you embrace the unexpected nature, when you're able to embrace like trying something and seeing what happens, sucking around and finding out, and like that being your only option, it's so freeing.
Yeah.
And like learning printmaking, like printmaking in the classroom, I could go on, but like it, because it's niche, because it's not foundational like drawing, you don't have to know how to draw. And because of those reasons, like literally anybody can do it who can use their hands. And like, not even, I just thought of other ways. You don't even use your hands. Anyway, like their barrier of entry is low, and it equalizes everybody.
Yeah.
Like suddenly, no matter like whether you have been drawing all your life or you're like, I'm not an artist, suddenly everybody's on a similar playing field. Everybody learning printmaking is learning something new. Everyone is a beginner again. Everybody is, there's like a community that forms around it. And then that thing starts to kick in of like, you don't know what's going to happen, and no one knows. And printmaking is not historically considered fine art the way that painting, drawing, sculpture is considered. And you know, printmakers and like collage artists and other like, or like fiber artists, right? All these like sort of tertiary processes that are maybe associated with commercial design or something, like separate from fine arts.
Like,
yeah,
talk about gatekeeping. Oof.
Yeah, these like boxes they get put in. There's a lot of printmakers that like fight to be recognized amongst like at the same ranks. I also think there's like such a power in that like outsiderness and like potential for like disruption that it offers. Like, and one of them is in the classroom of like, because there isn't this like big built up hierarchy and like expectation around what good printmaking looks like, the way that like drawing and painting has this like realism is all, and if you can draw correctly you are a god or whatever. Like it doesn't have that. Printmaking doesn't have those associations. It like it has associations to popular art. It has associations to fucking t-shirt design and zines and posters and
album covers.
Like, yeah, like all these like lowbrow like subculture, whatever, that just like allow for so much space and creativity. And like without fail, like everybody learns the process for the first time. Like even if in a different project they're like, I suck at drawing, like I hate art, like I'm so bad at this, whatever. Or if they're like, I'm like have like their own personal elitism or something, like it equalizes everybody. Everyone is like, wow, I did that. That's awesome.
So,
and it's humbling for people who do have the ego about it, because they're forced back into being beginners.
Printmaking beats down everyone. So normally at the end I ask people to give advice to younger designers, but we're actually literally down to the wire, and I feel like the last half hour, no, it's perfect. Like I think the last half hour was just giving advice to artists and educators alike. And I really appreciate having you here. I need you to write at least several articles for the website, because you have such a great perspective, having been through like the whole arc of art school and education, and you're still so young, and it's amazing that you get to live the rest of your life and like, you know, share on these lessons.
Thank you. My advice is keep going.
Keep going. Okay, that's what the yellow one says.
Yep.
We're probably there when I made some of these.
Just keep moving forward.
Okay, I will try to do that. Breakdowns like along the way though. Like,
yeah, oh yeah. Breakdowns, falling on your back, falling down the hill, but to keep going forward. despite it all.
There's no other option. We can't go back. Well, on that depressing note, from me, thank you for being here. And I appreciate it.
It can be beautiful to go back, revisit old art pieces.
Okay. It's a good part.
What I do every day.
Thank you.